People look at GA4, Meta, Shopify's own analytics. And what do you say to those skeptics that say, I don't trust you?
Try it. Find one of your ads, click on it from your mobile phone. You can then click on that journey and actually watch the steps when they added things to cart, when they abandoned cart. And that usually gives people that, oh shit moment. I trust that because I saw it.
Is that different to how maybe GA4 might do it?
So we're not using cookies at all. It's a lifetime pixel. We're on your site, we're server side, we're giving you the insights of people coming to your site and you own that data. The GA data is owned by GA. We'll capture 95, 96% of the revenue. But we're not 30% above. We're not 30% below.
20,000 Shopify brands. Trust Triple Whale, which gives you guys a position to be able to understand how brands are doing en masse. I'd love to see secrets or trends.
CPMs are up, ROAS is down. Google's had the biggest drop in ROAS. You've seen 80% of the ad spend is still spent on Meta. It's the mix of spend is changing. Conversion rate was down 7% in September, almost 11% in October. And then in November, it shoots up.
The pressure now is on. So reliant on October to January.
5 days less this year. You've got less time in between your BFCM and your final day to ship or Christmas. If you're doing those three things right, you'll almost always win in the space.
Welcome to episode 13 of CharleChats, the e-commerce podcast. My name's Nick. I'm the founder of Charle, a Shopify agency based here in London. And I'm so excited to welcome you to our home for some very open, honest, and real conversations with some absolute A players in e-commerce right now. So, without further ado, let's do this. Triple Whale is providing insights to over 20,000 Shopify brands in just 3 years since its launch, and is finding success since GA4 and iOS 14. Zach, what is the story of Triple Whale?
Yeah, we launched actually out of necessity. So our co-founders, I think similar to a lot of our customers who are entrepreneurs looking to solve problems, we're running a D2C brand. And one of our co-founders, Max, he asked a lot of questions about data. I get those questions today as our VP of revenue. And he was constantly going to our co-founder, AJ, asking him about his marketing. You know, why is ROAS up? Why are sales down? So they built a no-code dashboard that basically gave D2C operators a mobile app and a digital app that was just insights from Meta, Google, Shopify, TikTok, Klaviyo, which were kind of the main channels of the time, and quickly found that iOS 14.5 put a huge dent in their business. So they were fortunate that happened for Triple Whale and unfortunate that happened for their D2C brand, and launched a no-code pixel that could be installed on your site through the Shopify App Store, and that totally changed the Triple Whale business and the trajectory of our platform.
Well, Zach, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here with us. We're going to dive into so much data stuff, which is so hot with our merchant base right now. So I'm going to be picking your brains. But Zach, do you want to just give us a quick intro on who you are, a little bit about your experience and what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I've been working with e-commerce operators since 2012. I've always been on the SaaS side, but I've always worked in marketing technology. The company I started with was a company called WordStream, pretty large in the Google AdWords space. And our whole job was to provide a platform that gave marketers insights on how to optimize their Google Ads accounts. That was before or right around when Facebook ads launched. So we were only on Google Ads. We then transitioned to Facebook ads. Since then, I've been in the Shopify ecosystem, working for a startup called Unstack, which was a no-code landing page builder. And I joined Triple Whale 2.5 years ago, was the first real sales hire to own sales, build out the sales organization, and took over partnerships after that. So now lead sales and partnerships for Triple Whale.
Nice. Wow, what a journey. I mean, it sounds like you've been going towards everything that a lot of people go away from in terms of getting their head around data, understanding what's actually going on online, and not just putting their head in the sand, if you like, in terms of like, oh my goodness, I don't understand what these numbers mean or where they come from.
Yeah, I think one thing I've seen over the last 12 years is just the how educated our buyers are. So, early in the WordStream days, the WordStream blog was like massive. And a lot of our investment in marketing was in SEO and creating content and educating the market about how to optimize a Google Ads account at the time. Now you look at D2C operators and they know digital marketing as good as anyone and know the right questions to ask and know what data sets to look for. I think diving into the attribution space is challenging because no one trusts attribution, and I think it's an imperfect science. And obviously we can dive into how we're trying to solve for that and how the platforms are trying to solve for that. But it's a big, hairy, audacious goal to get after that market and really try to get people to trust you.
Yeah, I think I don't envy the position that you're in, because I think the world that we live in terms of protecting everyone's privacy, and people like Apple make a massive deal out of blocking everything, and but ultimately businesses need to understand what's going on so that they can serve their customers better and find customers, right? So I think it's probably daily here at the agency that we're getting merchants having data challenges, to be perfectly honest with you, with GA4 being naff, the connection between Shopify and GA4 also not being particularly great, and then also feeling like they have no control over why things aren't stacking up as well.
Yes.
So is that really where kind of Triple Whale has evolved to become in terms of that attribution space, because of that problem of brands not knowing where their customers are coming from or what channels they've seen?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think it started for sure with, where is the acquisition source? Where did this sale come from? I think where it's evolved and what's made it really resonate with our agency partners and brands that use us is it's one consistent journey. So the actually understanding your customer doesn't end when they buy the first time. It ends when they never buy again, or you stop trying to get them to buy again. And our pixel is a lifetime pixel, meaning the first click that someone makes all the way until after their first purchase and everything they do after is tracked in one journey across all channels. Where that helps agencies and brands align around is, let's align around the journey and not worry about every single detail, meaning like ROAS at the micro level on the first acquisition, an important metric to track, but let's understand how that LTV grows over time and really dig into it. So I think while we started with very much thinking about acquisition and optimizing for a return on ad spend on Facebook, which was the biggest challenge initially, now it's become much more of a, how do we optimize the lifetime value of our customers and better understand our audience? And then, the one thing we've been fortunate to have a couple tailwinds that have helped us. The first one, iOS 14.5. Second one, GA4 launch, which has been really challenging. And we've got an analytics platform that's included in our free plan, so people can actually track sessions and a lot of the metrics they used to look at Universal Analytics. And now I think even more so, we're benefiting from the ad platforms wanting to collect more external data. So they're looking to companies like Triple Whale to actually feed data back to Meta, TikTok, Snapchat, Google, all of which are really welcoming us into their platforms for brands to get deeper insights, which is a huge win for everybody in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I literally see daily at the moment. I follow quite a lot of other agency owners, which will be no surprise. And they're literally, I see so many people saying they've inherited an ads account and the data, like overnight, since they've been feeding back to like Google or Meta, better data from their current websites, like ROAS is just skyrocketing because now suddenly all these platforms can target people so much better. Before we get into the deep and dirty of the wonderful world of attribution and what brands are doing at the moment, I think it would be really interesting to hear from your view on how advertising platforms have evolved since their very early days, which really wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things. This wonderful world of digital is very young still. But I'd love to hear from you, being very much involved in that early on, in terms of how you think it started and how that compares to what brands are using now to target their customers.
Yeah, so Zuckerberg actually just said very recently, he wants advertisers to be able to set a goal. Basically give us a budget and a goal, and we'll connect the dots in between. And over the course of my career, 12 years in this space, and starting out with a SaaS platform that was meant to help you optimize Google Ads with alerts, we've consistently seen the platforms take away some of the control. So there was a time where you chose, demographics, and you had bid adjustments up or down for income levels, zip codes, and some of those things still exist. But you've always seen Google and Meta really start to push how do we take away all of these controls and just allow you to set a goal. And I think that's going to continue to be the evolution. Now, I think iOS 14.5 slowed that down because their algorithms very quickly got thrown out of sorts. But the ad platforms themselves, I think in the very long term, will want marketers to set a budget and a goal, and they'll connect the dots in between. I think in that scenario, creative is going to play a massive role in optimization. So serving as many creatives as you can, as many variants as you can. Landing page is going to be a really great place to play, and like really thinking about where am I sending these folks and how do we make that experience consistent. Brand will be another key to that, is how can I make my brand really resonate? And if you're doing those three things right, you'll almost always win in the space.
Yeah, I literally remember I met a very good agency owner who's now actually one of my best friends, weirdly. Well, it's not that weird, but there we are. And we did a shared pitch, and I think at the time we were doing some like branding gig or something like that, and she was running paid media, and I remember her in front of the client saying, so we've got a really unique strategy. We'll always bid as low as possible, and we'll push up a penny every day. There's all these thought processes around bidding strategies and how to really get the most bang for your buck. And I mean, we don't really work in the paid media space as such. But interestingly, recently, we just, for Charle, actually been running a few paid media campaigns. And it blew my mind when I went back into the platform and saw, hang on a minute, there's literally, if I do this goal, there's no way for me to change my bid. And it's like, we're not in, like you said, it's about the goal and the outcome as opposed to actually really manipulating who's seeing it when and so on. And I think there was a lot of fear amongst the whole digital community when iOS 14.5 came out and everyone was like, this is it. All those brands that have been absolutely reliant on acquiring new customers really cheaply are now going to go. And I'm sure some probably did really struggle from that. And, we see more people focus on retention and so on. But from your view, in the eyes of, say, Meta, for example, because I imagine you guys are really immersed in all the thinking that Meta does, did you feel that this is going to be a massive changer for brands in the way they acquire customers? Or did you think, well, Facebook still needs people to buy from their ads, so they're going to figure it out one way or the other?
Yeah, I think we were talking about our businesses earlier and not relying on one channel. So I think diversifying your channels is really important. Meta is still the biggest player in the game. For us, it's about 80% of the ad spend we see is still spent on Meta. CPMs have gone up. I think if I look at the last 5 years, 4 years, they're more than double. So you have to be incredibly efficient. I think you have to diversify and test new offerings. I think Meta will find a way to use the data that their brands are using to optimize. So as they've lost signals, they've launched things like Conversions API. And they're pushing really hard for everyone to adopt a Conversions API. Obviously, easy integration with Shopify. We have one ourselves. Even within the Conversions API, you can send custom events. So we actually recently launched a way for you to send just new customer events back to certain campaigns. Nice. So if you've got a top of funnel campaign that's interest-based targeting, you can only feed the algorithm new customer conversions. And we know it's a new customer because we're hooked into Shopify very deeply. And those events have been massive wins. We saw one customer very quickly lower CPA, new customer CPA, 15%. And that's a big win. So I think it'll take some time. I think over the next couple of years, you'll start to see Meta's algorithm catch up. Google's released enhanced conversions. TikTok, Snapchat, all are want to welcome in some data. So I think there will be really, really big opportunities for brands to capitalize on that. Nice.
I think it's definitely been a journey for brands, and that fear that you've seen every industry, right? When anything big changes, it's like, oh my goodness. I think probably Google search and SEO is probably going through a little bit of that right now with their AI results and Google doing way more to target different people with different page results and so on, which I think is really, really interesting. Have you guys seen media spend change since increasing costs to reach customers?
Spend is up. I think it's the mix of spend is changing. We've seen Google Ad spend go down. Expectation is that it will come back up throughout the holidays and BFCM. But throughout this year, we've seen that go down. I think of all the platforms, Google's had the biggest drop in ROAS that we've seen. Meta ROAS actually has remained roughly the same. CPMs have gone up, which just means people have gotten a little bit more effective, I think, in their targeting. I think we also used to see a growth at all costs. You know, in 2020, money was cheap. You could dump money into your business and find ways to cash flow it. Now we see a lot more operators kind of operating towards profit, whatever they can do to not have to take financing or external money. So we're definitely seeing, I think, more sound businesses being operated today. And I think from an ad platform's perspective, you mentioned Google, you know, they've got a lot going on at once that totally changes the dynamics of their search results. And I think even, you know, us from an SEO and content perspective, we're thinking about how we gamify that. How can we become that AI search result? So
e-commerce is hard, and sometimes you have to trust your gut. But if you want to be the next True Classic, your gut won't cut it. And that's where Triple Whale comes in. Triple Whale makes profitable growth simple and helps you understand who your customers are, where they've come from, what they've purchased, and how much they've cost. Triple Whale is an analytics and attribution tool trusted by more than 10,000 brands on Shopify. Still not sure that Triple Whale's for you? Get started for free today with Trends by Triple Whale. This brand new benchmarks tool lets you measure Google, Meta, and TikTok ad performance against friends and enemies alike. Say no to your gut and say yes to better data. Explore the free Trends app today at triplewhale.com/e-commerce trends.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, Zach, because one of our previous podcast guests, Ross, who was working at Loki, the trainer brand at the time, he was actually really firm and strong on the fact that actually all of the channels will compound one another, in the sense of, you know, he really sees Meta as that top of funnel, that brand marketing, which then allows Google search to perform really well and so on. But then I've also seen a lot of negativity around Performance Max, where it's like just stealing attribution from different channels when really it was never them in the first place, or it's like the last step attribution or so on. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how channels work with one another and whether there is a little bit of like almost gamifying of the results that the platforms are telling you their ROAS. I mean, that's where Triple Whale comes in amazingly, because you can get that source of truth. But yeah, I'd love to understand your view on that, being through this journey that you've been on.
Yeah. That is the value of Triple Whale. And I think it starts with having that consistent journey I mentioned from the beginning, and being able to actually look at first click attribution and last click attribution and actually watch the dollars kind of change where they come from. We get a lot of questions like, which attribution model should be used? Triple Whale offers 7.
Yeah.
The horrible answer, but the right one is you should really use all of them and almost build your campaigns with a model in mind for how you're looking to, what problem you're looking to solve. So yeah, there's no doubt that, hey, top of funnel is typically going to be Meta or TikTok. Bottom of funnel is typically going to be your Google search, which gains a lot from brand search, and your, you know, obviously email and SMS once people do get to the page. So I think there's no right answer to how you use attribution models. I think the right answer is to understand the customer journey as best you can, and then allocate dollars accordingly. Mixed media models are certainly coming up a lot. Lift analysis and understanding and holdout tests are things that people with good sized budgets that are multi-channel should be testing. I also think that you can't avoid the fact that TikTok shops and Meta shops are providing the buyer a good experience that potentially takes Facebook from being top of funnel into it being the funnel. Yeah. And if you're not testing that and understanding the impact of that on your business, you need to get into it today, because again, they're trying to take more of the control. But I do think it ends up in a good consumer experience.
I loved what you said where you mentioned around, when you need to look at what the problem is that you're trying to solve, as opposed to using these tools to tell you that. Because I think this is something that I really try and embed in our own team and brands that we speak with, is that actually, you can have every flashy bit of tech under the sun, but it's not going to tell you what a human being can in terms of that broad. It's not going to have that broad view of your business, your strategy that you're trying to deploy. So, for example, when we're reviewing websites, we historically, when we use Google Analytics, we'd use their user journey mapping to see where customers drop off and what the main common journeys are. Or when we're looking at heat mapping, for example. And I always say to the team, you can look at all of this data. You can look at the bounce rate on this main collection page, or you can look at the average time somebody spends on the website. But what it's never going to tell you is what you believe is to be the hypothesis of what you're trying to understand. All right, the bounce rate on this collection page is really high. Right, so the most obvious thing would be, maybe the design's terrible and it's turning everybody off. But actually, when you deep dive into the user journey flows, or you look at heat mapping, you see, we've actually just linked everybody to the wrong collection page before, so that's why they're bouncing. So it's having that broader picture. And I think it probably has that same strategy needs to be used when looking at attribution in terms of, okay, well, what's the strategy of the campaign that you're running? Why is it's not because Facebook's naff, it's because one thing you're telling them is different to where you're pushing them. Or maybe that customer's already bought the product that you're still ramming down their throat, for example, and trying to have a more holistic approach to, what's the attribution model that's going to be most appropriate to you. Would you agree? That's kind of like part of taking that full picture to making decisions in your business.
Yeah, you bring an interesting point. The new customers versus returning.
Yeah.
To me is the best way to look at your business and the best way to build campaigns. Meaning, Meta accepts new customer events in their conversions API, and when you send them, it sends it to more new customers, which in turn, it might bring your conversion rate up. Might bring it down because you need to educate them. But those are the types of insights you need at the top of the funnel to understand how the page is going to perform. So we have an interesting report that's like a source medium report. And then we've got another report that's like conversion rate by landing page and ROAS by landing page. And I think where it gets really interesting is when you start to kind of move your way from the landing page up to what was the ad, what was the campaign settings? And as you look at the stats of that landing page, backing your way into, okay, did this accomplish? And what are the expectations I could have? I would say grade all of your campaigns on a curve, kind of choose the outcome you want as you're building the campaign and the funnel. And that's going to provide the customer the best experience for them. And also it's going to give you the insights of when should I turn this thing on, off, up or down? Because if not, you're making a decision that's not about the whole journey of the customer.
Yeah, 100%. And sometimes we can almost be a little bit deaf by too many factors at play as well, can't we? Where actually we immerse ourselves in so many different views, or if you're not being very specific about what you're wanting to get back from looking at the data, and you're being too broad in the sense of, right, well, I'm looking at all of the bounce rates across all of the pages, or I'm not actually filtering down by a particular campaign with the view to understand how just new customers are performing. If we get those really broad stats, then sometimes it can tell you nothing, because you're almost, your view is way too broad on what's actually happening. Now, I imagine there'll be some listeners who are not too familiar with the events that you can fire back to Facebook and what that actually then does. So, Zach, would you mind just explaining a little bit more about the Conversions API and what the events mean for brands that are using it?
Yeah, so Conversions API has been a big push by Meta for a few years. Even our Meta rep at Triple Whale has asked us to go and set it up a few years ago or a couple years ago. And we were just using Google Analytics to send that data back. They've evolved that a bit into accepting custom events, which we support now. And they're evolving it again in their most recent announcement with like an attribution passback from third-party providers. So that includes us, GA4, and some others. And what that's going to actually allow people to do is what we just talked about. When you build a campaign, you'll be able to then tell Meta, I want to look at this on a lifetime attribution window, which they've never supported. We do, with a first click attribution. Mm-hmm. So actually give this campaign, this is a top of funnel, interest-based, men 20 to 35 throughout the United States. It's a pretty broad funnel. You got to give that time. I got to educate the market. So what they're going to begin allowing marketers to do is take the data they've been optimizing off of in Triple Whale manually and feed the algorithm that same data. And what that unlocks for them is, one, we kind of get to use the insights our customers are using to feed the algorithm, which then feeds the end consumer. But two, I think it gives them a ton more events that they've been missing out on with iOS 14.5, which will make their algorithm smarter, faster. And I think that's going to be a very big win for them. Some other things that they're looking at is like, hey, can we send back LTV? Which is just going to juice their revenue numbers. But it is an important insight because if you're optimizing a campaign and just looking at CPA and ROAS of that campaign, you're actually not potentially allocating enough money to it. Mm-hmm. Because if it is acquiring your best customers that buy from you 4 times over 90 days, mm-hmm. well, you should be more comfortable with increasing the new customer CPA on that. So I think there will be some huge wins for operators in that space. I think it'll be a big win for Meta. Of course, they always get to collect some of the dollars there. And I'm really bullish on it because the folks that have not historically trusted, the Triple Whales of the world, as I have always said, you're optimizing off one metric and Meta's optimizing off of different signals. You shouldn't do that. You should trust Meta. And they can't say that anymore because Meta has come to us and said, we trust you all. And we're going to tap you on the shoulder and we're going to take the data that, thousands of brands are using and now feed it back to our algorithm. So it should be a huge win for the market.
So taking it super simple, now Meta will allow us to feed much more data back to them about the customers that are buying on their website, basically, or interacting with the website. So then Meta can go, these type of people are really interested. Now we're going to show it to more of them, and now we can find more converting customers for that particular brand. Would that be a fair kind of summary?
Yeah, I think it's that, and then exclusions.
Yeah.
So I don't want to keep showing it to repeat customers.
Yeah.
Which happens way more often than we all expect, no matter how many exclusion lists you create, and that's just going to take your dollars and point them in the right direction faster.
So it's not all lost for Meta just yet, then.
Never.
Which is good. The world is more positive, which is exactly what we want. So if you're a brand right now, knowing all the data that you have access to, what platforms do you think that they should be investing pretty damn hard into right now? What's hot right now in the world of e-com?
Yeah. I think there are first-party data providers, so I'd invest in that, obviously us. Whether it's us or not, I think it's a really important one to invest in. Conversions API solutions, which we have included, which is just enrichment of data back to ad platforms or email service providers. From a marketing dollars perspective, I think continue your investment in Meta. TikTok's is getting very, very strong, and I would continue to invest in there. If you tried it a couple of years ago and it didn't work, I recommend trying it again. And then one that I think almost always surprises brands when they get started with us and leverage our post-purchase survey and some of our models that are not just click-based is the performance of Pinterest. Mm-hmm. Pinterest is a really interesting top-of-funnel brand strategy, and highly recommend brands testing that as well.
I see so many people on LinkedIn literally talking about Pinterest. It's wild, isn't it?
It's almost always the lift that people are most surprised by. Meaning, a lot of people are like, I know TikTok's kind of working because you can feel it. But Pinterest is always the one when they look at it, they're like, whoa, we did not expect that, and let's turn the dial up there and invest some resources in it.
Yeah. I think it's because if I look at my own friendship group and I ask them, does anyone use Pinterest here? Not to be too controversial, but I think most people would probably say no. I don't know about you, but
no, same answer.
which is why I always get really confused by who's using it, because I don't know anyone that is. Like,
yeah,
I think
there is certainly markets where it's going to win a lot more,
uh,
and I think there are a lot of people that use it as a search engine when the output is I need something visual. As home brands, furniture brands, anything that's more design and decorative, I think is going to have a lot of opportunity to win there.
One question I do want to ask you, Zach, is TikTok obviously pushing hard right now to be the new Google search. You know, I've seen quite a lot of their campaigns. They're actually just up by Battersea Power Station literally a couple of months ago with a massive, great big pop-up being like, TikTok's the new search, or search on TikTok. What do you think?
No doubt about it. I think it's a great way to gain insights. I see my wife use it a lot for like local kids events or things that we want to do as a family.
Yeah.
I use Reddit a lot as like a search. Like if I bought a mattress, I don't know, 6 months ago. I spent a ton of time.
Yeah.
In fact, the r/mattresses, those people are diehard mattress reviewers. Super happy with my purchase. So I think you'll start to see other sources of insights, reviews become kind of new search engines with high buying intent. I would put Reddit and TikTok and Pinterest at kind of the, in that top of the list of places you should be testing, placing organic content, hiring people to answer questions on Quora or Reddit. They don't like selling, but you can answer questions and feed some insights there. So I think it's a really great strategy. And yeah, I think TikTok is very quickly becoming a place that people go to for search results and insights.
Yeah, I think what's nice about the platform is that you can't really fool the algorithm in any way, shape or form, in the sense of, because it's all very short form content. It's not like Google, where I think they've been a bit of a victim to their own success in that SEOs or brands over the years have become very good at understanding what ranks well. I don't know last time you ever searched a recipe and how far you have to scroll down just to find the bloody ingredient list, because they historically Google's valued on word count and having lots of keywords or relevant content about this beef Wellington that you're going to make, and really people just want to see the ingredients and how to do it.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult with text-based content for Google to understand how people and actually compare other websites with one another. Whereas, video content's probably going to be, it's a lot easier for the algorithms to go, yeah, this is beautiful content. Everyone's loving it, liking it, sharing it, and so on, which I think is interesting. Now, pain points. Obviously, data is a challenging topic and a challenging area that we see a lot of our brands dread, to be perfectly honest with you. Occasionally we'll see brands that have, real specialists in-house, or actually they will outsource data specialists alongside all of their other agencies as well, which is interesting. What are some of the big pain points you're seeing with the brands are having right now?
Yeah, so I think we look at our customers in kind of three distinct cohorts that operate differently. So there's kind of the less than $1 million brands, owner operator, just need to grow. Don't need too many data and insights. It's kind of that 1 to 10 million threshold where, okay, we got some traction. New customers are here. We need to worry about LTV. We need to be engaging folks over longer periods of time. Platforms are no longer just Meta and, some Google search. It's now we're expanding and testing other channels. 10 million plus. And we put that into one bucket, but really there's like a $10 to $50 million brands where you start to see them saying, okay, we got a lot of data. We need a solution that brings our data together. And they might be exploring a data warehouse, a Snowflake or a BigQuery or whatever it may be. Visualization tools, Tableau and Looker and ETLs that basically allow all the piping to happen. And then they go, whoa, this is hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially. And I don't have the skill set in-house, so I need to outsource or I need to hire someone in-house. So I think it's funny. People know they need that solution, but they consistently put it off. And I think we can be that for a lot of brands and have been that for a lot of brands kind of in that, $1 to $100 million range. And we're starting to win a lot more deals above 100 million. And we're starting to really build to become the data warehouse and data solution for D2C operators, because I mentioned it earlier, but money's not free anymore. We need to find ways to optimize the customer journey, increase AOV, increase LTV, and really understand our operating expenses. And without that, you're just so cash flow dependent that you can very quickly run out of money, or not be able to fund the next PO for inventory, which then means I shouldn't be spending marketing dollars, which then leaves the business dry. So it's really important to get your P&L in line early. It can be a Google Sheet to start. And then it needs to evolve into something that really looks at your OpEx as close to real time as you can to make sure that you're allocating funds appropriately. And it's a heavy lift. I mean, it's a heavy lift for us, and we're 150 employees. We have a small BI team. Like, it's still a lot of work to get all of our data organized internally, and our customers feel that pain, and we're helping solve that, which is great.
Nice. And you mentioned it a little bit earlier on in this episode around trust on data, and we're seeing it continually now. People look at GA4 and it says one thing. People look at Meta, their ROAS says another. Then they look at Shopify's own analytics, and that's completely different to what GA4 is saying. So obviously you guys are coming in because you want to be that trusted source for brands to have one centralized place they can go, yes, this is correct, and I understand how the data is being calculated. So how is that journey for you guys? Is it something you're up against every day? And what do you say to those skeptics that say, yeah, this is wrong, or I don't trust you?
Yeah. One, transparency. So we have a variety of models. They're all super transparent in what they are. We show you the individual customer journey. So the best way for me to prove this, we'll get asked this all the time, how do you do cross-device tracking? Meaning if I start my journey on my mobile phone, go to my laptop, I'm making a big purchase. I make bigger purchases from my laptop. How do you do that? And the thing that we always say is try it. Go find one of your ads, click on it from your mobile phone. Go to your desktop, search it from brand, register for your email, then convert via email. You can then see the order show up, live order feed, as real time as possible. Within about 5 minutes of an order being placed, we'll attribute it. We'll put a name with it. We'll put an order ID with it. So you can then click on that journey and actually watch the steps all the way down to the pages they visited, when they added things to cart, when they abandoned cart. So we provide a lot of transparency all the way down to the individual customer journey. And that usually gives people that kind of like, oh shit moment in the sales process where, okay, I trust that because I saw it. So we want to provide as much transparency as we possibly can. And I think that's a really important part of kind of pulling the veil back from attribution. And that usually wins folks over. And if it doesn't, coming in and optimizing with our metrics over the course of a few months gives them a lot of validity in supporting their hypothesis. So typically every marketer kind of knows, here's what I think is happening. When we end up supporting that, we win. When we end up being the opposite of that, we have some more to prove. But the data doesn't lie in the customer journeys and the order journeys. So we typically can prove that with our customer success team and professional services team, which will come in and support brands in making sense of the data.
And what does that mean when if people are skeptical and you come in and you optimize, what would that physically look like? Could you give like a bit of an example?
Yeah. So an example might be, I'll give you a very specific example. We had a brand come in that sold pet food and subscription based, pretty large brand in the $80-100 million range. And they were really hyper fixated on new customer acquisition. But majority of their revenue was to an Advantage Plus campaign that after, kind of using us in a proof of concept for 30 days, quickly saw, our purchase percentage from new customers on that campaign is less than 50%. I think it was like 49%, meaning they were trying to target new customers. They were putting a bunch of money into this campaign, had exclusion lists set up, and Meta just wasn't able to kind of quite optimize to it. So we were like, hey, let's look at this. It's not actually hitting new customers. You got these other two campaigns that are actually hitting new customers at a much higher percentage, 60-65% purchase rate from new customers. we just challenge them. Let's do a test for 1 week where we reallocate some of the budget, and then we'll monitor it for a couple weeks thereafter. And what we actually saw is new customer purchase percentage went up on those, and their overall new customer CPA went down 25%. So I think the optimizations come from, one, you unlock new insights. So there are new metrics by which you can grade the performance of your campaigns, and you should do that. Two is, what is the goal of these campaigns? So when I'm looking at a campaign, how do I want to allocate my budget? Which ad creative is resonating? So we really see people shift where they're making the decisions from a metrics perspective, typically make decisions faster. So the data being real time from Triple Whale gives you better insights on when to turn an ad on or off. Now, you should have a threshold of ad spend you need to allocate to that ad before you want to turn it off. But an example would be if I'm running a 72-hour sale, right? Black Friday, Cyber Monday is only a few days. It takes Meta roughly 72 hours to kind of feed their data back into tell you that the ROAS is up or the ROAS is a 5, whatever it may be. You know, with Triple Whale, you can launch that campaign on Friday and turn down budgets on poor performing, increase budgets on high performing, or turn ads off that are underperforming and better point your budget towards the top performers for the next 2 days. Whereas you would actually be making a decision too quickly if you were relying on in-platform metrics. So speed to make decisions and then the metrics by which you make decisions are two things we see a big shift in our customer base.
Nice. And, you know, going back to that skepticism, you know, it's great. Everything you're saying is amazing. But how does it actually work? Because, you know, some of the skeptics out there say, well, Google GA4 aren't getting it right, Shopify aren't getting it right, or Meta's still not getting it right. Why is Triple Whale getting it right? How does it physically work in the least technical way possible?
Yeah. So think about us as a security camera that's on your website. So you bought a piece of property, that's your website, and you want to put a security camera on it. And every time someone comes to your site, we basically take an anonymous snapshot of where they came from. We use UTMs that are important to be put on all of your ads. We also pick up UTM source, so wherever the source is coming from. And we store a bunch of different things about their device to create an anonymous kind of profile of that person. Every time they leave and come back, we basically do like a match back. Okay, do we know this device? If so, which one does it look like? And then we attach those UTMs again. So that kind of gives us, UTMs give us where they're coming from. Device characteristics give us who this person is. And then once they convert from Shopify, we ingest their order ID, who they are, and now that previously anonymous journey has an order and a person attached to it. And that gives us the insights needed. Now, we have a whole team dedicated to this pixel. It's the largest part of our organization, just about. And their whole job is to make it more accurate, doing better matchbacks, better insights that we can grab. And then their other piece of their job is what's coming. So iOS 16 or 16.5 had some changes to it that we knew was coming. We knew when it was being in beta. We found ways of working around it. So we got to stay ahead of the platforms. But that's something that we are ready to do and have done multiple times now. And I think our customers see that.
And how is that different? So obviously you guys have your Pixel, which is collecting continual information about customers. How is that different to how maybe GA4 might do it, or some of the platforms that people are just not trusting right now?
Yeah, it's not cookie based. So we're not using cookies at all, which is really important. GA4 is kind of another interesting customer story. If you feel like your direct traffic's inflated, that can typically be because the GA cookie's a session-based cookie. So we had a brand that had a really complex quiz, and it was awesome. They actually pointed all of their traffic to the quiz because it just collected so many great insights. It was a fit quiz. But their journey through that quiz and then to making a purchase was longer than 30 minutes. So for customers that actually just came from Meta and converted, a bunch of their revenue, about 15% of their revenue from Meta was getting attributed to direct traffic. And they knew inherently, like, that's just weird. Like, too much revenue in GA is being attributed to direct traffic. But what was actually happening was the session-based cookie was kind of starting over after 30 minutes and saying, oh, this is direct. With us, you get that insight of, okay, it's not a 30-minute session-based cookie. It's a lifetime pixel. Now, if you only want to look at it for a one-day click, you can. But you can also look at that same journey over the lifetime. So one, we're not cookie based, and two, we're on your site, we're server side, we're giving you the insights of people coming to your site, and you own that data. It's not owned by the platforms, which is really, really important, and a big distinction that should be made is this is first party data that you are collecting and you as the brand get to own, whereas the GA data is owned by GA. It's a lot of their signals, their cookies. So that's a really, really important part of what we're building too.
And it's quite a closed world, isn't it, in GA in terms of who knows how, for the most kind of common person that are delving their feet into data. I mean, I'm sure you guys have so much more insight than most, say, e-commerce managers, for example. But actually, platforms like GA, you just kind of have to just sort of trust it. And there's not really anyone going, how is this doing this? And how is it knowing where and here and everywhere? Which I think, is probably part of that lack of trust as well, is there isn't that transparency about how these platforms are working. And I think even now we're still fighting brands that are trying to get their GA4 to match up better to Shopify's analytics, for example, and it feels like a sort of fight that you're never going to win. We'll have one day it's like, it matches up perfectly, and then the next day it's like, well, it's not anymore, and it's because of everyone like declining cookies, and then or they're using browsers that block it all anyway. So I think it's exciting that you guys are finding ways to kind of get around that and feed better data back to brands effectively, and to the algorithms, of course. Do you think cookies have had their day? I mean, I know Google have been umming and ahhing about phasing them out for about years now, and then they're keeping them, then they're getting rid of them.
Yeah. My bet is they keep them.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's they've gone back and forth enough for me to be confident, not be confident in any of their decision making on that thus far, but I think they will be keeping them. And I think you mentioned a point earlier that I just want to reiterate, like the number one reason when we get on demos or talk to brands is I added up the revenue from all the platforms, and it was like 40% more than I actually made. And nothing's truer than like the deposit in your bank account. So like, I know I can't trust it because it's just not the dollars in my business. So, that's a really important thing. And we, again, being connected to Shopify, we can tell you how far we're off. Like, sometimes we'll capture 95, 96% of the revenue. So we're definitely missing, 4 or 5%, but we're not 30% above. We're not 30% below, and we're going to be within a margin of error that's never more than what you made, which is so important in just speeding up your decision-making process. I think a lot of people just spend so much time, looked at yesterday's and it was close, looked at today and it's way off, and it slows down your actual decision-making process. So if we can help that, that's a huge win too.
Yeah, nice. And what are some of the bigger challenges you have? We painted a lovely rosy picture of data and Triple Whale and how amazing it is, which of course it is, but what are some of the bigger challenges that you're facing and you maybe envision the future facing as the world pushes harder on protecting everyone's data?
Yeah, I think that's one. I think Apple is, they're trying to be the hero. They present themselves as such, but they also know my heart rate right now. And like, that's scary data that no one in my life knows outside of Apple, right? Like, so like Apple's collected more data about almost all of us than anybody. So there's always that kind of looming existential threat of what could happen. We rely on a lot of platform data. And I actually, when I left WordStream, I was like, I'm never going to work for another company that relies on another platform's data. Here I am. That's literally all we do. But I believe a lot in what we're building. So I think that's always a little bit concerning. And then I think educating the market is super expensive. I talked a little bit about my journey at WordStream, trying to do that and doing that. The market does not trust attribution for good reason, and we need to flip that on its head. And I think people are coming around, and we have a lot of brands that do trust us. But that is an expensive endeavor to educate people on why you're different and great. So that's always a challenge as well.
Yeah, I completely. I'm quite an Apple fan. I love their products, but I completely hear what you're saying about them playing the hero card. I find it a really boring narrative, actually, that they're pushing it so hard in terms of, their little Apple logo that looks like a padlock. I'm like, it's a bit try hard. And I think sometimes when you see people pushing a certain narrative, they're almost over-egging it, if you like, in terms of why are you pushing this so hard? All right, you feel like it's your differentiator because other tech companies are not looking out for people. But I also think, well, there is another edge to this sword because, before the world of online, if you took away the ability for people to find your fruit and veg shop in the street, people would think it's an outrage. But there's this kind of air of like the common public don't understand it. And actually, when you block people's ability to show people products, it's actually affecting thousands of people's lives and the ability to sell products as well, which is the fundamentals of the human race, right? In terms of buying, selling, and exchanging goods and so on. So I think they are pushing one narrative of yes, we will protect you, but who are they protecting here? Because we need data to be able to help find customers. And actually, if we don't find customers, then that's just as harmful as not sharing data in the first place. So
yeah, I think Apple has a storied history of watching the market and products, building a great version of that product and selling a ton of it. Mm-hmm. And it would not blow me away if very soon Apple had an ad network that is consumer targeted. They obviously have the real estate. We got right here on us right now. We've got 4 billboards, and I think that's a big opportunity for them. And it wouldn't shock me if they were saving the targeting for themselves. As a longstanding Apple investor, I'm totally fine with it.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely an opportunity for them there, and we see them start to shift into that at some point. And then all the brands will have a new ad platform.
Yeah. If I was more intelligent in the world of targeting, I would love to pick apart how Meta, their ability to target people, and then how Apple's ability to target people with their App Store ads. Yeah. I would love to rip that apart and see under the hood and go, not so good now, are you? And I bet that would happen. You only need to look at like the likes of how they treated people like Spotify and just updating their app and so on. And it's not so pretty as they like to paint. Okay, so just going back to kind of trends, I'd love us to dive into. I mean, you're in a very privileged position in that actually 20,000 Shopify brands trust Triple Whale to inform them about the data and the analytics of their businesses, which gives you guys a privileged position to be able to understand how brands are doing en masse, right? Which is pretty rare. Yeah. So I'd love to see and pick your brain in any kind of secrets or trends or anything that you can share with us about how your very large merchant base are seeing. So
trends I mentioned earlier, CPMs are up, ROAS is down over the last 4 years. I think if we look at example like last Black Friday, Cyber Monday, I'm doing a lot of analysis right now about the market. How did it change before BFCM and then what happened on BFCM? So before BFCM, you'll start to see things like conversion rates down. Actually, the expectation would be conversion rates are going to be down in September and October as people kind of window shop. I think there's kind of the back to school rush, and then there's this lull. And you might see things like traffic maintain and some other things. So that's something that we expect to see. And I just did a big analysis of last year. Conversion rate was down 7% in September, and I think almost 11% in October. And then in November, it shoots up. So it's something to monitor.
Everyone's waiting.
Everyone waiting.
Window shopping.
Yeah. So add to cart events, understanding and making sure that you've got add to cart flows set up. Early offers, we see that PFCM starts to move up a whole bunch, and then for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, new customer purchases were up 7 or 8%, just between 7 and 8%, 7.4%, I think, last year. So what we're starting to see is it's less. So many brands talk about my VIP list. I'm gonna do an exclusive offer for customers. The fact of the matter is, gift givers and new customers can be a huge win for brands. So understanding those markets and those segments now can give you a nice shot in the arm towards the end of the year. So post-purchase surveys are a great way to collect that data. If you're not trying to understand who are gift givers, that's the best audience to go target. And then acquiring gift givers. So what's the persona of the gift giver? And then how do I go and target them as a new customer for the coming months? So those are some of the data points that we're looking at and going, oh, interesting. These should actually drive some of the strategies going into the back half of this year.
Mm-hmm. The pressure now is on for e-commerce brands, right? We even within our merchant base, a good amount of them are so reliant on October to January to fund their whole year more often than not. Any final... Sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think we have 5 days less this year because BFCM's closer to Christmas. So you've got less time in between your kind of big push from a marketing and sales perspective on BFCM and your final day to ship to get there before Christmas. So not to add any additional pressure, but one thing to look at now is the calendar and planning your offering.
Have you seen how miserable the Christmas date is this year?
Oh, no. What day is it?
If you have to work between Christmas and New Year, you're not going to be happy. We have to come back for a Friday and then miserable. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, looking at the calendar now and preparing your promotions accordingly is going to be key, because if not, you're probably already a little bit behind.
Yeah, that forward planning now. Even we were talking before we started filming around the big rush to get content ready, to get the website ready. When does the code freezes come in? No one's touching this website because we are now all hands on deck, sell. Any final tips that you'd give some of the amazing listeners to make sure they have a very strong and fruitful holiday period?
No, I think get your reporting together now, and don't sleep on starting to collect data points today, so you know what you're optimizing off of. Zero party data is key. That post purchase survey is something that we provide, and there are a bunch of great providers out there. Collecting that data now can be really, really helpful to understand where you should deploy your budget for BFCM. And don't stop investing in SEO and brand and CRO. I think as CPMs go up, the number one thing you can impact is the conversion point. You'll get the traffic. It's going to be noisy. If your ads are good, you'll get the traffic, but converting, it's going to be where you win. And as CPMs go up with the election season in the United States, and then BFCM following that, a couple weeks later, you're going to want to make sure that you've got a really tight conversion experience, both on obviously mobile and desktop.
That's it. Because when you're looking to cut costs, it's so easy to go, well, look, we're just going to focus on Meta. Let's not focus on anything else. Even us, this year, we started investing in LinkedIn ads. And to be honest, the number of leads directly from there, was it any different? Not really. Yep. But we saw the number of people on Google searching the word Charle up by 100% year on year. So I think that really don't underplay the impact that channels have with each other, and not looking at them in such independence, which I think is how awesome Triple Whale is, in the sense of, one thing I love is literally clicking on a customer and I go, right, they went here, they went here, then they went to this channel, then they went to this channel, which I think is super powerful. And just before we wrap up, the trends tool on Triple Whale is amazing to allow customers to see how brands like them are doing at any given time. But I'd love just to hear a little bit on that tool.
Yeah. So we have an app. It's free on our site, and basically gives you trends from the ad platforms, Meta, Google, and TikTok. Gives you up to yesterday's data. So it's not real time, but it's up to yesterday. And I think the reason we built it is every day on Twitter, someone asked, CPMs are up today on Meta. Does anyone else feel that? And operating a business can feel lonely at times. And if you're going to Twitter to look for insights, that just tells us that, hey, the market wants something here to be able to monitor this data in real time. So yeah, our Trends app can be a great place to go and look at how are the ad platforms performing, how do folks in, we've got a couple different segments, but revenue, AOV are the two main ones that you can look at. We also have a guide that we did from last year for every industry. Industry would be the third vector that you can flip there, where basically we crunched BFCM data points from every industry. It's about 100 pages, but you can choose your segment and get a shorter version. Highly recommend checking that out. Again, don't even have to give us anything more than an email. You might not even have to give us an email anymore. And that's going to tell you where you should be benchmarking yourself for next year or this year. So definitely check that out as well. Both are great resources, totally free. Please just take them and use them to have a successful holiday season.
It's literally our number one question. Well, how is everybody else doing? Are you seeing this in your merchant base? Yeah. People want to know what but also every brand looks very different. We have some brands that do no business in the holiday period, and they do it at the beginning of the year, for example. So I think what's really awesome is actually seeing people that are similar to their industry, revenue size, and so on. For example, our merchants that do crazy numbers of millions, their conversion rate is going to be tiny compared to the people that are doing 500k a year, because they're like, got their 7% conversion rates, loving life. So Zach, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. Honestly, I could pick your brain all day long and talk about this world of data and understanding how we target more customers and increase sales. But unfortunately, we have come to the end of our time. But thank you so much for joining me. And we'll have to have you again in a few years to see how the world of advertising has changed.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Zach. Data and analytics is a world I know so many brands struggle with. It's confusing, it's time-consuming, and it can be really hard to know what to trust. I absolutely love chatting with Zach and the work that they're doing to help brands understand where they're gaining customers and what they're doing on their website. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 13 of CharleChats, the e-commerce podcast. And we'll be back again real soon.